Brooklyn with Succubus Publishing here. With 1.1 on the horizon, I thought I'd throw together a video to round out the How to Play series I made so that new and old players can quickly see the biggest rule changes in 1.1. For this reason, I've kept the old videos the exact same. Regardless, the old How to Play videos are mostly correct, sans the fact that most of the components used for images have since been updated to reflect a better and more balanced experience. Though really, we didn't change anything so fundamental to the rules that it would affect anything I said in that video, so drastically that it would invalidate the rules that I was intending to get across. Where the rules themselves are different, however, I've added notation cards via YouTube. With that said, I'm excited to go over everything we've done to improve Middara. While subtle, the subtle changes are still important. Plus, I wanted to make sure you all had what you needed to get to the table after watching those videos. That way, you can reference the rulebook as needed. Let's get to it. Let's start with what you'd need to know to get to the table if you're a new player coming off the previous videos or a backer of the first edition who is interested in the meatiest of changes when related to rules. Middara is gigantic. Any hope of getting it perfect would have been dashed against jagged rocks if not for our wonderful community. While many cards and components have undergone some change or another, very little has changed in terms of rules you must know to play. But let's go over what has changed. First, we've added unique initiative cards for allies versus opponents. Previously, this was usually the case. However, some figures, such as espers or bosses, didn't always have their own initiative cards to use. Additionally, initiative cards now shuffle at the end of every round, meaning at the start of each round, players shuffle all the initiative cards. The cards are then dealt face up near the board to create the new initiative track. Starting with the initiative card closest to the front and moving backwards, adventurers and combatants take their turns. Once a figure has taken their turn, continue backward to the next initiative card and repeat until you get to the back of the initiative track to end the round. After the round ends, shuffle all the initiative cards and simply repeat the process again until the encounter reaches an end condition. Additionally, when new combatants spawn, combatants are now added directly after the turn of the figure whose current turn it is. So, for example, if it was Nightingale's turn, and she revealed a totem that instructed her to spawn a Water Loa, she would add this card, the Water Loa card that is, directly after her own initiative card on the initiative track. This means, after her turn concludes, the Water Loa will now start its own turn. Second, we've added a fourth golden rule and aggro tokens. Sometimes, a combatant will be attacked from a position where they cannot retaliate or won't act as none of their AI steps are true. In these cases, if a combatant has been the target of an opponent's attack, spell, or ability and has no true AI steps on their turn, add an aggro token to their card. While a combatant card has an aggro token on their card, add the following to the bottom of their card. Otherwise, move towards the nearest opponent. This figure may jump up to 4 spaces during this movement. The idea behind this is to prevent our AI from being abused in what is very niche cases. Combatant tokens contained too many rules to fit on their corresponding combatant cards. We wanted more room for their AI steps, so we've decided to put all the combatant token rules in one place. On the back of the rulebook, you can find every combatant token. Their rules, the figure they're associated with, and a picture of the token should make it clear how and when these are used. Additionally, we've included a quick reference at the bottom of this page to help remind you what tokens are kept or removed when you're starting a new encounter or instructed to restore. A big shout out to those in our community who have helped provide these sorts of things. While we're here, I'll cover another change not mentioned in the first set of videos. Counter may now receive a discount to its SP cost if the attack in question was also dodged. Next, Heavy got buffed. Now, a figure with this tag may reduce movement from currents, effects, and abilities by 1, meaning that free movement granted by your own disciplines will only be affected by Heavy if you want them to be. However, adventurers with Heavy must incur a -1 to their total movement value and take a -1 penalty to their agility. This tag is also cumulative and can have its effect occur from more than one source or instance of heavy. This means that an adventurer with heavy on 2 different items must incur a -2 to their movement value. Upgrades are acquired differently now. There is no longer an upgrade available by default at the start of a story. Additionally, upgrades no longer have rarities and can be unlocked at any point during the adventure instead. To unlock an upgrade for purchase during a story round, players must discard monster loot with the material tag. If they do, they may choose an upgrade to unlock by marking it on the adventure sheet. This upgrade may be purchased by all adventurers during all future story rounds. There's a bit more to it than that, but in short, upgrades work the same in respect to how they are equipped and sold as mentioned in the previous video. Sweet. So, we've also added a new and very important tag to some combatants called alternate. This tag means that the combatant has rules printed on the back of their card that augment when and how their card is intended to spawn. In all cases in Unintentional Malum Act 1, the alternate tag is used to denote combatants that are used instead of their counterparts as the loot level increases. Specifically, the intent in this product is to make monsters harder and harder as the game continues. In Unintentional Malum Act 1, these alternate combatants and their rules are always tied to the current loot level. So, another big change in 1.1 is summoning. First, now the only restriction to your choice in summoning is its level requirement, meaning you may only summon an Esper that is an equal level or less than your highest level assemblage discipline. This means that summon tokens are no longer spent to summon Espers. Instead, these tokens are now used as an additional way to activate your Espers. This means that Espers now persist between encounters if you can keep them alive. Lastly, unless it says otherwise of course, a summoner is limited to 1 summon at any given time. Additionally, we've added skill stats to both Espers and Conduit cards. This means that if an adventurer with low agility, like Rook, were to turn into a Gwevadin using Conduit summoning, he'll be able to jump gaps better than most. Espers now have scaling icons. Combatants with an asterisk listed where a number icon or combat dice usually go now use the number icon or combat dice listed on their respective summoner's card. This includes anything that augments these values, such as weapons or disciplines. This means that your Espers will now get stronger as their summoner gets stronger. Of course, this can also be said about opposing Espers summoned by combatants who might now also get stronger using the alternate tag as the game progresses. So, for example, this opposing Spirit Blade would use the Living Antediluvian's green-blue conviction, blue casting, 40 hit points, 15 defense, and gray combat dice. Pretty brutal. In addition to giving summoning some TLC, Conduit summoning also works a bit differently now too. Now, to use a Conduit, you must unlock it. To unlock a Conduit card, the adventurer with the Conduit discipline must be within SOI of a combatant when they are defeated. If this combatant has a Conduit card available, the adventurer will also earn their Conduit card as a reward. This also means we added a handful of additional Conduit cards to represent other combatants in the game that thematically should probably count as creatures that adventurers could turn into on a whim. As the campaign progresses, or as we add additional content and bounties, you'll find yourself earning new and varied Conduit cards moving forward. We also made the Conduit summoning discipline a bit more versatile. Let's take a look at how it might be used now. Let's say that Rook wants to jump this gap and make an attack against the animate on the other side. Well, to jump the following gap, Rook would normally need to make an Agility 12 check, 10 plus 2 for every additional space after the first. Rook's agility skill is garbage. He has a value of 1, meaning that he'd need to roll an 11 or better to succeed the jump check. The dude is way too buff to jump that far. It's no problem though. Rook is lucky enough to have the Conduit summoning discipline. Using Conduit summoning, Rook may spend 1 SP to swap his adventurer card for any Conduit command card that he has earned. Rook has previously been within SOI of a Gwevadin being killed, meaning that Rook has earned the Gweveden Command Conduit card. Rook decides that being an agile murder puppy is a better idea than the oaf that he is. Rook spends 1 SP and replaces his card with the Gweveden Conduit card. With his new agility stat of 6, Rook now only needs a 6 or better to pass the jump check. After successfully jumping the gap, Rook might want to attack the animate. However, since he is in his new Gweveden form, he would only be able to use standard actions and abilities or the abilities printed on the Gweveden Conduit command card. If Rook wanted to use the abilities printed on his item cards, or any disciplines he's learned besides Conduit Summoning, he'd have to spend 1 SP to swap back to his original form. Lastly, accessories no longer have rarities. Now, unless noted as unique or wandering, they can all be purchased during any story round where accessories are for sale. If they are marked with unique, they are only obtainable as a unique reward from the listed tier. This, of course, brings us to another new tag, Wandering. This tag isn't used in the base game. The item depicted here is from an expansion inside of a resin kit from Wave 1. Anyway, this tag is used to denote items that are shuffled as a reward in any tier when drawing a unique item, meaning if a player earned a unique item from the mundane tier, or any tier for that matter, they would shuffle any other wandering items they own as a possible reward. Any restrictions to the item type would still apply, meaning if, for whatever reason, the unique item in question referred only to unique armor, for example, then the pushal parasitic clothing wouldn't be shuffled in as an option, as it is an accessory, not an armor type item. Cool, let's move on. The companion app was a disaster. It's super hard to update, maintain, and support an app long term if you aren't prepared. We dove right in and got straight destroyed by all the overhead. Whatever, it doesn't matter, we got Foreteller Games on board, and these legends got us taken care of. You can easily access the audio from Middara Unintentional Malum Act 1 via their app. This is also free, so don't hesitate to utilize their superior audio lineup for your board games. For those who want the raw MP3 files, those are on our website for free as well. The abridged version is now complete as well. We call this the Spark Notes version of Middara. This can be accessed via our website on your smartphone. We're working on a print and play version of this as well. In short, it's listed by scene. When you're instructed to read a scene, you just click the Spark Notes, read the bullet points, follow any adventure mechanics by referencing your adventure book, and then you continue this process until you are instructed to set up an encounter via the adventure book, then finally kill monsters. So 200,000 words be gone. Yeah, buddy, so easy, cool. So that's everything that required mentioning coming off the tail end of the How to Play series. Of course, you can stick around and watch the next part of this video if you're already familiar with Middara and are curious to see a bit more of the nitty-gritty changes involved in 1.1. The following rules are only relevant if you have already been playing Middara or learned to play using the older rulebook from our first Kickstarter. Though, of course, it can't hurt to get a deeper dive into our intentions and rules not mentioned in the How to Play series. There are far too many minor changes to list here. If you want to see a more detailed list, go check out the changelog on our website. Even this changelog isn't 100% complete if I'm being totally honest. Even so, it's more detailed than what we have here. Additionally, it should probably go without saying that we included all the errata found from the first wave, which was admittedly a rather large list. Again, no reason to go over the individual items here. If you're really interested, you can go to our website and see the old errata list. Suffice it to say, the community has really forged Middara every step of the way. Future printings will include any additional errata we root out between now and then. For this reason, we'll be vigilant when making changes to make sure that they get included in our future changelog. Cool, let's go over some of the highlights of the changes to 1.1. First, we've really tightened up our timing by firmly establishing that you cannot make an action or use an ability that grants actions without ending any other actions or abilities currently granting actions. This has helped clear up confusion surrounding complex interactions and balance a variety of abilities. It's generally just kind of made the game move quicker. So, for example, some abilities give an adventurer more than one action. In this case, the discipline Whirlwind allows an adventurer to make attacks against all figures who are adjacent to them. When this occurs, the adventurer must choose the order in which they would like to resolve these actions. Let's take a look at how this interacts with Quick Blow. This discipline allows an adventurer to make a melee or ranged attack action during the follow-up step of an attack action. If the adventurer would use another ability that grants actions, or make another action not granted by the current ability, such as Quick Blow, all actions that the current ability being used granted that have not already been made are lost, meaning if the player used Quick Blow on the first attack made using Whirlwind, it would end Whirlwind and forfeit any additional actions or text listed on the Whirlwind card. So, in short, to optimize this combination, you'd want to Quick Blow on the last attack action granted by Whirlwind. Besides clarifying strange interactions that could crop up on certain discipline builds, an intended side effect of this new ruling is to address how counter works during movement. Now, if you counter during a move action, you must end your move action, meaning you have to decide to either try running through a gauntlet of bad guys or attack them back. It's your choice. But without something special to allow you to do otherwise, you won't be able to do both. We have a north token now. This is used to visually show all the players at the table which direction is north without having to remind yourself via the encounter setup diagram in the adventure book. Being real, I have no excuse as to why this wasn't included in the first printing, but whatever. Next, we included a pad of adventure sheets, so you no longer have to print them out. This is another inclusion that I have no excuse for avoiding. The tabletop role-playing guy in me had me imprisoned in a place of ignorance on the topic. I didn't understand how obvious it would be that players wouldn't be ready to just print out sheets at a moment's notice. Sorry. I hope this inclusion of adventure sheets will redeem me, if only a little bit. Let's see, what's next? Yes, so we've got immunity paralyze tokens now. Paralyze was pretty god tier, but more importantly, getting paralyzed over and over again just wasn't really fun. It felt like you were playing against that blue magic deck where your friend gets to play the game but you don't. For this reason, paralyze can now only affect a figure once per encounter. We accomplished this by making the paralyze effect add an immunity paralyze token after wearing off. This token is used to remind the players that they cannot be inflicted with paralyze a second time this encounter. This of course bleeds into an important tune made for 1.1. We've balanced many of our effects to play well with boss monsters. Previously, some effects, such as paralyze, were too strong to let players use them on boss monsters. This means that while some effects might not be as strong as they once were, they can now be used against most bosses, unless thematically inappropriate, of course. Though, as usual, we'll simply put immunity to these effects on bosses we don't want affected by them. Another change, we've added energy tokens. Previously, many abilities referenced one random token or another to use as a generic token to keep track of something that ability did. We've condensed all these abilities into energy tokens now. We've also added the missing Bug Bomb token. This token was referenced in a handful of encounters, and we forgot to add it. We even had artwork for it and everything. Next, Dynamite tokens. These were already in the game, but we updated them to have a lit side and an unlit side to help players keep track of the current state of each token. Great. So, to go over some other quick additions, we've added some new tags. First up is Nimble. The first time each turn this figure can dodge an attack, they dodge. During this dodge, if this figure doesn't roll the skull, add +1 to the result. This cleared up a lot of text on combatant cards that used this ability in one way or another during their passive, or just on their AI steps. Now many of these AI cards simply just use this tag instead. Next up, Provoke X. Any figure that leaves a space within range X of a figure with Provoke will provoke a break attack from that space. This basically extends your threat range of break attacks. Pretty neat. Next up we have Command X. Now push only moves figures away and pull only moves them closer to you. Everything else is handled by Command X. This tag allows you to move a figure orthogonally in any direction. So Chains of Command is really more like Into the Pit by Command now. There are dozens and dozens of other smaller changes, fixes, and tunes, but most are simply clarifications of rules and our original intent for some of the cards, or new different abilities baked into the text listed on the cards themselves as opposed to any change in the rulebook. These smaller changes have trickled down into larger changes for those who have been playing a ton. They primarily affect the meta of our game. So, for example, we've added clarity to existing tags such as flanking and reach, but this clarity has really changed what might be considered optimal for those who are min-maxing. So flanking and reach, for example, the flanking rules now state when two allies are on opposite sides or corners of an opponent, so long as they are not under an effect that would prevent them from making an attack and they each also have an equipped melee weapon, they are both considered to be flanking that opponent. Figures making a melee attack against a target they are flanking gain +1 to the attack roll. And the reach rules now state Reach X. Melee attacks can be made at range X. These attacks are still considered melee attacks. Figures with reach are considered to be flanking with melee attacks within reach X. Allies without reach may also consider another ally's melee range when determining if they are flanking an opponent. This intentionally changed our flanking possibilities while also making it all clearer and sensical. So let's go over an example of what the ramifications of this rule change are by taking a look at how both reach and flanking work together. So long as you're attacking an opponent while there is another ally who is also within melee range of your target and on the opposite side or corner of the same target, you gain the flanking bonus. So let's go over some diagrams to help explain this better. In this diagram, one highlighted right here, Remy has reach 2 and is within 2 spaces of the animate. This means she is within range to make a melee attack. If she does, she will gain the flanking bonus since Rook is also within melee range of the animate and also on the opposite side of the animate. If both Rook and Remy had reach 2, they could both get the flanking bonus against the animate so long as both figures were in range and on opposite sides of the target. Even though Rook and Remy could still make an attack at reach 2, neither are flanking from opposite ends of the target, so neither could gain the flanking bonus since there is not a figure on opposite sides of the target. A way to visualize this is to draw an imaginary line between the center of each figure. If it is drawn through opposite corners or sides of the target, then you may flank. The blue line here represents what that might look like. You can see that it does not draw through opposite sides of the target. Meanwhile, both Nightingale and Zeke could also attack, but they would also not be considered flanking. Remember, when determining if you can flank from a corner, another ally must be able to attack the same target from the opposite corner. In this case, both Zeke and Nightingale could now flank. You can even use reach 2 to flank targets diagonally. This gives you a ton of range. But keep in mind that line of sight is still taken into account, so friendly figures will impart a -1 to your attack even when you use reach. However, since you are still within melee range of the target, you still get your flanking bonus. Now, if an opponent was in your way, or your line of sight was blocked, you could not make an attack even with reach. This means that other figures would require you to be within melee range, would also not be able to flank. Flanking only requires that another figure on the opposite side of the target could also make a melee attack. This works the same with large base combatants too. Reach simply expands your melee range. This means that the larger the base of the target you're trying to flank, the more spots there are to flank from. Like the previous example, you can see that being on opposite sides of a target within melee range is all it takes to flank. The blue line is again drawn here to show that both Remy and Rook are attacking from opposite sides. In the case of the larger figure, this has given them more room to work with as each side is bigger. This means that with larger bases, you can easily get more models into position. In this example, all 4 figures are in flanking positions, but remember to keep an eye out for more creative flanking positions. So, another great example of these small clarity changes trickling down is the effectiveness of melee versus spells. Balancing these two has necessitated so many small tunes across basically every AI card that it would be a boring list of me naming off conviction value differences for 10 minutes. Suffice it to say, the community has put a ton of work into making Middara and turning it into what it is today. We suspect future errata changes as we design future products. However, unless it's game-breaking, we will likely be avoiding any significant changes to Unintentional Mount Act 1 moving forward. In either case, we hope you love our magical world as much as we do. We're ecstatic to see more crazy builds and all the creative ways our community will continue to break our game. May we all benefit from building Middara stronger together. Well, this has been a long enough video. If you're interested in more Middara, don't hesitate to join our Discord channel. We have a constantly updated FAQ and errata you can check out if you ever need a refresher on any of the examples given here. We also have templates for free on our website, so you can create your own homebrew content and your own stories. Till next time.